Hey everybody, Coach Jacinto here. So in this video, we're going to talk about one of the blocks that we utilize throughout the year. Okay, so in the first video, I kind of talked about how we put how we select the exercises that we select, how we kind of piece them together. Now we're going to start talking about, okay, so what are some of the rep schemes that we use? What are some of the strength methods that we use? And how do we attach those to the exercise selection that we talked about in the last video, okay? So for the first blocks, and what we're going to talk about is the first 3-day strength plan that I like to use with our student athletes, especially coming off right after Christmas break, right? So they've got a 2-week break. Most of them don't do a whole lot during that time, and now more than ever, it's like these kids are sitting, right? So what I thought about was, how can I get their glutes and their hips working right, especially after sittings for 2 weeks? How can I get those hips working properly before I start loading them too much, okay? And so I'll kind of go over that. So as you can see on the screen over to the left here, January 1st through the 26th, our focus is glutes. And what we do is we use sumo deadlifts and hip thrusts. So you can see here, so January 1st through January 26th, these are the dates here. It's our 3-day strength plan. Our focus is glutes with sumo deadlifts and barbell hip thrusts. And you can see here now, I was very much that person. Like, I use the trap bar a lot, right? So that was the thing that I really liked to use, and I think still a lot of people are still using that, which is fine. It's a great tool. But one thing that I found was, it's like, okay, so how do I get these kids, okay? Because a lot of coaches have gotten away from teaching the deadlift. But as I say, it's like 2 things that my student athletes will end up doing on their own. Okay, so when they're at the gym, there's 2 things that they'll always do. One, obviously, is bench press. So they're always going to bench press, right? When they're not with me, they're going to bench. When they're on their own, bench press is one. The next thing they're going to try to do is they're going to deadlift. All right, especially if I don't do it in the school setting. Okay, they're going to do it. So why not teach them how to do it properly? Okay, so when they do it on their own, they have an idea of how to do it. I love the sumo deadlift because it really helps get these kids in the right position. Okay, so if I get them nice and wide, yes, they're gonna complain about doing sumo deadlifts because, first, obviously they're not lifting as much weight. Okay, especially if they've been doing trap bar for a long time, because obviously we know that you can lift more weight with the trap bar. Okay, and also it's just not, they don't feel like they're just not used to it, right? Now, once I tell them to get wide, point their toes out, and then bring their hands straight down, it is amazing how much better these kids look when it comes to technique than any other exercise that we do. So even those kids that have a hard time, right? So they hunch their back, even when they squat, right? The first thing they want to do is they want to hunch their back, push their hips forward. What I can do with the sumo deadlift is I get them wide and have them sit on the bench. And they sit on the bench, have them sit right where their hamstrings, I tell them, okay, so right where your hamstrings attach your glutes, and most of them kind of have an idea. If not, they kind of know that region. So I tell them, sit right there, sit all the way down. And so they'll sit on that area. And then I'll tell them, lift your chest and drop your hands straight down. Now you will be surprised of how good of a position they are in there, okay? One thing that I heard from Louis Simmons said he uses the sumo deadlifts for his athletes. The reason why is it teaches them to push laterally, okay? So for our athletes, where they're just not, most of them are not just linear, right? So they've got to be able to push into the ground and learn how to create force into the ground, like pushing out laterally. That's what I love about the sumo. There's just so many benefits. And it targets the glutes so much more than any other exercise other than the hip thrust. Okay? So on another day, what we'll do is we'll do barbell hip thrusts, okay, on the bench. All right? So we'll spend an entire month We won't back squat, but we'll spend an entire month just really focusing on getting their glutes working properly before we load them, okay? And so here's what kind of it looks like, okay? So here's like day one, we'll deadlift, sumo deadlift, okay? And we don't go too heavy. As you can see, we're going 5 by 5 and not even at 80%. We'll go 55, 60, 65, and then 70, and then 75%. We'll kind of progress up and we'll do a 5 by 5 there. We'll go a little heavy. We'll go about 90% just to kind of give them a little something on week 3. But this is just 2 weeks of really going, you know, really focusing on technique and really focusing on their glutes. Another thing that helps is weighted step-ups, okay? To where they're reaching back with their back foot, almost leaning forward into that runner's lean, and then stepping, pushing into the box. That'll really isolate the glutes as well, okay? So, and then as you can see, we go hip thrusts. With our hip thrust, we don't go heavy. So we'll go repeated effort method, okay? So reps of 8, 10, and 12. All right, so like I said, repeated effort method is really our hypertrophy phase, and this is where we're really trying to focus on building the glutes up, okay? So that's our first phase there. Usually we use this about 6 total weeks only throughout the year, okay? Sometimes I'll hit it a little bit like at the beginning of the season, or for our football players that made it to state championship, we'll have them come in 2 weeks right after. It's kind of like a deload, just kind of not put any pressure, extra pressure on their spine after they've been playing, you know, a long season of football. We'll give them a week or 2 of just, you know, getting those glutes firing again, and then right after Christmas break, okay? So any type of break where your students have been sitting a long time, this is a good time to put this, okay? In our next videos, we'll talk about an eccentric and isometric plan. And then we'll kind of make videos throughout for the rest of the blocks, okay? Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.